Generally speaking, throughout Yu-Gi-Oh's history, if a card only gave you life points or only dealt damage to the opponent, it probably wasn't going to see play outside of dedicated burn strategies. That's not to say that these cards are completely useless or that they're not fun to play. You know, I love comboing Necroface with Soul Absorption. It's really funny to go to 100,000 life points on turn 1, but I'm probably not going to take that deck to a tournament anytime soon. However, over the past 3 or so months, we have seen a huge resurgence in life point changing cards at big tournaments, and in today's video I wanted to talk about why that's happening. Why are so many pro players suddenly playing multiple cards in their side deck for going into time compared to the past where they might only play one Gaga Cowboy in their extra deck? In today's video I'll talk about what cards are seeing play, why they're seeing play, and how you can play around them. Today's video is once again sponsored by longtime channel supporter Ridge Wallets. Some of you might know this already, but I've been using a Ridge wallet for a few years now, and honestly, I can't really imagine going back at this point. If you're looking to upgrade your own wallet or perhaps gift a friend or family member a wallet for the holidays, look no further than Ridge Wallets. There's over 30 different colors and styles to choose from, including fan favorites like Carbon Fiber and Forged Pacific. Each Ridge wallet can hold up to 12 cards, and they have a money clip on the back for carrying cash. Ridge wallets are also made of durable, long-lasting materials, so each one comes with a lifetime warranty. Ridge also has these cool new key cases for carrying your keys that can even match your wallet. If you're interested in picking up a Ridge wallet or any of the other great products from their website, make sure to use my link at ridge.com/Dzeeff, because now through December 22nd, you can save up to 40%. Thank you, Ridge, for sponsoring today's video. For those of you that might not be aware, if you go to an in-person Yu-Gi-Oh event that is official, you will have a time limit of some sort for each round. The time limit itself does kind of have to exist for in-person play, because obviously tournament organizers can't just book a convention center for 24 hours. You know, people do have to go home at some point, but it can lead to some frustrating situations for the player base. Now, the end of match procedures when the time and round is called can vary depending on what situation you're in, but for the vast majority of situations, what happens is that when time and round is called, you freeze play, and then whoever is turn player can finish that phase of their turn, and then at the end of that phase, whoever has higher life points wins that game, which means if you were in game 3, whoever has the higher life points wins that match. And I'm not here to debate the time rules. I've done that in plenty of videos in the past, but it's important to know these when we're talking about these life point cards in today's video. These cards are all played to avoid losing in time to the end of match procedures. And I feel like right now players are preparing even more than normal because of 2 big reasons. Games are relatively back and forth right now, especially between the Ishizu tier limit mirrors, and also top decks take a long time to do their turn 1 combo, but not in the way that you might be thinking, because when people talk about long combos, they're often thinking of linear combos that just have a lot of steps. Right now though, the Ishizu tier deck just takes so long because it has so many choices to make depending on your mills, and even honestly depending on your own skill as a player. And in my opinion, that's why so many people right now are playing these life point cards. For example, one card that has gained a ton of popularity in the past couple of months is Red Resonator. You've probably seen this card all over the place at tournaments if you've gone to regionals or YCSs. Red Resonator is a level 2 monster that says when this card is special summoned, you can target one face-up monster on the field, gain life points equal to its attack. Might not sound that crazy, and you might be thinking people are playing this card for the first effect, which is admittedly pretty good, but actually this card is seeing a ton of play because you can summon it from Gigantic Spright's effect. And that means that if you go into time during your main phase on turn 1 and you are playing Gigantic Spright, you always have a way to gain a ton of life points. Not to mention that oftentimes the Gigantic Spright can be made using an extra deck monster, which means it'll have 3,200 attack points, which means the Red Resonator will put you over 11,000 life points on turn 1. Now, under normal circumstances, that might not really matter because who cares about having 3,000 extra life points? But if time and round is called during your main phase, well, now you're ahead on life points, so you're able to win on turn 1 even without a battle phase. It's especially easy to get to, of course, because of that Gigantic Spright, which means that pretty much any playable hand in Spright has a way to win in time. Not to mention that even if the game didn't end on your main phase and your opponent got a chance to play, you can then use the Spright Elf that you probably summoned throughout your combo to revive the Red Resonator and gain even more life points. This actually was a huge factor when Spright Runic was a very popular deck, because the Runic cards make you skip your next battle phase. So if you had a mirror match, both players would be skipping a lot of battle phases and you wouldn't really get a chance to attack. So if you were headed into time, Red Resonator would be a really great way to actually make sure that you did some damage. Keep in mind that in the Spright deck, oftentimes you are using Spright Starter, and that causes causes you to lose life points, so you really do need a way to gain life points if you're about to go into time. That exact situation happened in a YCS finals not too long ago, if you guys remember that. Joshua Schmidt and his opponent were both playing Runic Spright, and Joshua was able to red resonator in game 3 to finally be able to win the match. Another example is Volcanic Scattershot, not because of volcanics or anything to do with its regular effect, but only because Volcanic Scattershot happens to be a level 2 monster that says if this card is sent to the graveyard, inflict 500 damage to your opponent. What makes this card particularly good right now is that this is a great target to send with Spright Sprint. That is a new monster released in Darkwing Blast not too long ago, and that card mills a level 2 monster from your deck on summon. So you can send the Volcanic Scattershot, deal 500 to your opponent, and then go into a Spright Elf later on to revive the Scattershot and then use it for a Link summon or Xyz summon and then detach it, and then burn your opponent for another 500. The Volcanic Scattershot Sprint interaction matters for a few reasons. If you are playing Spright, it matters because it means you don't have to waste your gigantic special summon on a monster that doesn't really do anything besides gain life points. Now you can use it for cards like Spright Blue or Spright Jet if you want to. But maybe even more importantly, Volcanic Scattershot fits a lot better into the tier limit deck compared to Red Resonator. Not that they couldn't play that card, but Scattershot just makes way more sense because you can randomly mill it, so that's pretty cool. Maybe you don't have a way to get to Sprint and Elf on turn 1, but if you get lucky and mill it, you're at least doing 500 damage to the opponent on turn 1. Also, in the mirror match, if you go second and your opponent has to mill 5 cards because maybe they open a little bit weird or maybe they just want to mill 5 cards, you can then mill the Volcanic Scattershot randomly on their turn, which they might not be expecting. This is going to be true for the next card that we talk about as well, but I wanted to mention it here with Scattershot too. Next up, we have Skullmark Ladybug, a card that says when this card is sent to the graveyard, increase your life points by 1,000 points. Notably, this card is not level 2, so you might be wondering why people are playing it, but it just turns out that 1,000 is a lot, and tier mills a ton on turn 1, so you can reliably see at least 1 or 2 copies of this milled on the very first turn if you are playing tier, or at least you should see that. And that's a big deal because it takes 2 Volcanic Scattershot activations to match Skullmarked Ladybug's life point gain, so it definitely is a card that's good when you think your opponent might be siding into Scattershot. And even though it's not level 2, which means you can't use Gigantic or Elf or Sprint, you can send this card with Beatrice, for example, which is super easy to make, and before it was banned, you could use the Curious Lightsworn Link 3 monster to mill it as well. So there were ways to get to it, and there still is Beatrice. It's just not as easy to get to as a level 2 monster, but it's not that difficult either. Finally, let's talk about Ghost Sister and Spooky Dogwood. Now, this one might not be as popular as the others. It is a bit harder to get to. There's not really a good way to search this. You kind of just have to open it. It's a hand trap type card versus a card that you summon or mill, so not everyone is going to play it. But I will say this, if you are going second in game 3 and you think your opponent might be able to combo off a bunch on turn 1 to prevent you from getting a turn before time and round is called, Ghost Sister and Spooky Dogwood is one of the best cards that you can side deck. This card's effect is pretty crazy. Each time your opponent special summons an effect monster or monsters during the main or battle phase, you gain life points equal to that monster's attack. If you did not gain life points by this effect, your life points are halved during the end phase. So basically, it's a max C, but instead of drawing cards, which is obviously insane, you gain life points, which historically speaking has not been very relevant. But right now, because of how common it is to go into time at a tournament, Ghost Sister and Spooky Dogwood is definitely a card that you want to consider. You also have cards like Agave Dragon and Psychic Life Transfer that are really good extra deck monsters that can maybe help you win in time. These aren't as popular at the moment, but they were pretty popular like 3-4 months ago, so I wanted to mention them. But how do you as a player beat these cards? I mean, obviously you could just play them yourself, and that certainly does work, especially if you are playing a Shizu tier element. A lot of these cards are playable in that strategy, but let's say you're not playing a Shizu tier, or maybe you're watching this video after that deck has been relevant. Well, in that case, I think one of the best tips that I can give players is to know when to concede. If your opponent is comboing off and they set up a board like even halfway through the combo that you know you cannot break with your current hand, why are you still watching your opponent combo? Why are you trying to break the board? I mean, if your opponent ends on 4 or 5 interruptions on turn 1 and your hand can only push through 2 of them, there is no point at trying to play through it. Now, things change in games 2 and 3, but in game 1 specifically, it is so good to scoop if you know you can't play through it, not only to save time, but also to prevent your opponent from knowing what deck you're playing. And if you go to tournaments, you'll see this all the time at top tables, and it's not because the players don't want to try to play through it, and it's not because they couldn't get like halfway through the board and maybe do a little bit of damage, but it's because they know they can't win that game. And unlike some other card games, it doesn't matter if you go 2-1 or 2-0 to win a match. All that matters is that you won the match. So people scoop game 1 without playing any cards just to make sure that they have enough time to play games 2 and 3. Another quick tip that I think is kind of obvious, but I do want to mention it, is to make sure that you've practiced your own combos and you've read through your own cards for whatever deck you're playing, especially if you're going to a bigger tournament like a regional or YCS. You don't want to be spending time on your turn trying to figure out what your own cards do. You want to be spending your time trying to figure out what the most optimal play is. So make sure if you are going to a bigger tournament that you've read your own cards, and make sure that you've read a lot of the popular cards in the format, just so you don't have to spend as much time reading during the game. That'll definitely help you avoid time. Anyway, that is all for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know in the comment section below. Are you playing any of these cards? Have you lost any of these cards? I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. I'll see you later though. Thanks so much for watching. Goodbye.